Hey everyone, welcome to the Cast and Spear podcast. My name is John, and today we have back on the show Matt Hoang, Mr. California himself, and we are going to be talking about lobster diving here in California. Welcome back to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
And let's just talk about it, man, because I think not a lot of guys do it per se. It's kind of a totally different experience. You have to go out at night. You have to grab these bugs by hand. Like, tell me about the thought process. Like, what got you into it, and then what should people be thinking about it if they want to try it themselves?
Yeah, man. So for me, I was fortunate to to be introduced to the sport for my desire for lobsters. So my cousin told me, he's like, dude, did you know there's like lobsters in the waters of California? I was like, what? They're not from Maine or like Canada or Boston or something? It's like, yeah, you could get lobsters here. So that's what piqued my interest, man. That's how I got in the water and started my whole career spearfishing and lobstering. And I recommend for any spearos out there that don't lobster to go ahead and lobster, because lobsters are delicious. And on top of that, it will make you a better spearo or speara. I think that's my hot take when it comes to lobster diving.
Well, first off, is there any difference in taste between a spiny lobster and a Maine lobster?
Great question. Yes, definitely. So, spiny lobster are going to be, I think, a little bit more lean compared to Maine lobster. Some people attribute that lean and like kind of a firmer texture to contribute to like create a sweeter taste. Although for me personally, I think Maines are still a little bit sweeter because of the higher fat content. It's a little more tender. But the real value of spiny lobster for me is, again, that texture, like that textural component, and that how should I say? I think it has a stronger textural component, and then also more of like a deeper seafood flavor.
How big can these suckers get?
Ooh, dude, I think the record is like almost 20 pounds, maybe more now. But like, just for your reference, Southern California lobsters don't have claws like the Maine lobsters do. So like when I say a 10-pound lobster, you know, 10-pound Maine lobsters, I mean, it's big, but it's not that big. But a 10-pound spiny lobster, that's like all head and tail. So they're huge.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen any of the pictures of spiny lobsters with like spear fishermen putting them on their chest, and it looks like right out of that Alien movie, you know, the creature that sucks onto your face. That's exactly what it looks like when it just grabs on. Because you've had some big ones, right? Where you put it on your chest, and that's how you hold them when you're coming back to the surface, and they like legitimately wrap themselves around you, right?
Yeah, bro, they hold you. You don't hold them.
Which is crazy.
They literally, yeah, they're crazy. I got a 13 last year, 2 years ago, last year, 13, 12.5, almost 13 pounds.
Now, is there a taste difference between the big ones, say the 12 and a half, and the smaller ones?
Got another hot take for you, John. I don't think there's a big difference in taste. If anything, the bigger ones are even more delicious. Everyone says, I don't like the big ones. They don't taste that good, or blah, blah, blah. It's really just in how you prepare it, man. I think the main challenge that people face with the bigger ones is that the tail is so large that it doesn't cook very evenly. So, like, by the time the outside is cooked, the inside is still rare, or by the time the inside is cooked, the outside's overdone. But what I did is I took a big tail and I just sliced it up and did shabu shabu. Dude, so tender, so flavorful, so sweet, so good.
So you're saying you cut it into chunks and then just cook it in the broth kind of thing?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that sounds
And
great.
I want to touch base on it too. A lot of people say for conservation, not to take the big ones. For me, at that time, that was an experience or experiment, just to see, if what people were saying were correct. I mean, now that I know they're delicious, I'll still think about releasing one. Like, I think the first big one I got was 10.5, and I let that guy go because of what people were saying. And the second one, I was like, you know what? Let me try it, and it was good. So, I mean, it's up to you guys to be responsible. Make the decision for yourself. If you want to release them and help the environment out, by all means, or if you want to eat them, I'm not judging.
So yeah, man, I definitely agree with you on trying to release the big ones, especially if they have eggs underneath. But then a part of me is also thinking like a spearo takes such a small quantity of lobsters, in the grand scheme of things compared to say the commercial lobster guys. And I read some article, and I think that was the LA Times, where a big export is our spiny lobsters to say to China and different countries overseas, because people in the California don't want to pay for expensive lobsters. They'd rather just get them imported from Maine. So part of me wants to know, is there an upper limit slot limit for the commercial guys, because if they're able to take any size lobster, and they usually can take, big cages full, it's a totally different game. Then I don't know if the spearos necessarily should have to fall by that rule. I'm saying we should always do our best for conservation, but if any of you guys know, reach out to me. I would love to kind of get your take on it as well.
Yeah, I definitely want to know that as well. If there's an upper limit or to throw back the big ones or whatnot.
So, is there any technique that you've learned to get better at catching them by hand? I always feel like every lobster season it takes me at least a few dives just to kind of get my reflexes back. I feel like I'm mush.
Yeah, man, I got a few tips and tricks. People might think I'm weird for it, but number one is just in general, just identifying lobsters and getting better at finding the areas. A skill that I think people don't talk about and aren't aware of that good lobster guys have developed is learning how to map the reef. So like you're obviously diving at night, so you're confined to your visual scanning by just your flashlight. So being able to like map the reef in small sections and then kind of piece them together to create this like mental map of the structure and the reef is like paramount to your future success in lobstering. And then in terms of like actually grabbing them too, I like to make sure that while I'm going for the grab is like you're consciously making an effort to stay away from the antennas. Those are their feelers, of course, so that's when they can sense danger. So if you're like reaching from in the front or from above, just make sure you kind of are able to find an angle where you can slip your hand, underneath the lobster and get a clean grab on it so he doesn't spook out before your hand gets there. And the last thing I like to do is I like to use two hands. Kind of a cool thing to be able to do. But two hands obviously better than one hand. There's many big times where I put one hand on a lobster and it's not quite the grip that I need to secure the fish. So I got to get a second hand on back or something to make sure I land the guy. So in order to do that, I've actually got this little like clip-on light onto my mask. It's this little like tiny AAA battery dive light that you can turn on and off, and it's not that bright. It's just bright enough where you can kind of see what's going on. And so I'll use my main light, spot a lobster, and then immediately drop that light so that I have two lights and then close the distance in the dark. And then as I get close, I can use two hands.
Do you use white light or do you use like a green or a red light?
So I actually I use a red light, and I got into it just because like people have said that lobster can't see red light, which after using a red light, I don't believe that to be true. I definitely think that they could see the red light. What I think it is there's like a certain threshold of brightness that I think lobsters are accustomed to. It also depends on the area too, but like for the area that I hunt, the lobsters are particularly sensitive to light. So I've noticed that if the light exceeds a certain amount of brightness, that it'll spook the lobster. But if it's like kind of dim, they'll be more comfortable with it. And the second thing too is after using the red light, I actually like it a lot more than using white light, just because now when I'm scanning, I use the red light to kind of just filter out all the colors. So underwater, now everything just looks red. Whereas if I'm using white light, it's like reflecting off the reef and the coral, so I'm getting like purple, sea lettuce, and then like the green eelgrass and the brown rocks, and it's a lot of like color information for my brain to sort out. So now that I've been using the red light, it's pretty cool because it's all one color, and now I'm just looking for shapes, so I can ID an antenna real quick because it's just like, oh, that's an antenna shape, and I'm not getting distracted by all this color information.
I was going to ask you another question. Oh, yeah. So I have the worst luck when it comes to grabbing good sized lobsters from caves. And I know, try to get the hands around the antenna. Don't even grab the antenna because they'll break off. Do you have any tips for like getting that big guy out of the cave?
Ooh, the head to head, the face off.
The big face off. I
Oh
always
yeah,
lose
okay,
that face
cool.
off.
Well, with the bigger ones, it's easier because so instead of the antennas, you got to grab the knuckles, so the base of the antenna. Even then, that has a tendency to break off. Like it's happened to me. I broke the knuckle off the fish or off the lobster. And so there's a couple things that I've realized with the big face off is number one, you know, go head to head, grab the base of the knuckles. And I've noticed that spinies actually have the tendency to want to flip away from you. So if I could describe it, instead of thinking like, okay, you grab the antennas and then he's going to immediately pull straight back away from you, what I've noticed is the lobster behavior is a lot of times when they're scrambling out away from a hole or trying to get away from danger, when you grab them by the antenna or the knuckle, they'll actually try to flip. So the top end of the fish will actually like scoot upwards, and that motion is what's going to like break the antenna. So when you get the grab on, kind of push forward and upwards to kind of match that motion that he's trying to flip away from you, backwards from. And then obviously having a second hand, you can drop your light and get your second hand in there, get a second hand on the knuckle so you can spread out the force. The antenna will be less likely to break, or the knuckle will be less likely to break.
And I guess what I'm probably hearing people or think about is you're going out at night a lot of the times. Isn't that scary?
It can be scary. Absolutely, man. I still get freaked out. It just feels like somebody's watching you at all times. But I still love I still love lobstering because, number one, lobsters are delicious. Number two, I think it'll make you a better spearo, man. Like, it's cold, you can't see much, you got to map the reef mentally, and also you're taking generally shorter dives but higher intervals. So, for example, if I'm spearfishing, I'll be down for like a minute and up for a minute at minimum or whatever. But when I'm lobster diving, I'm like down for 30 seconds and I'm up for like 10 or 20 seconds and I'm back down for 30 seconds. So I definitely recommend, even though it's cold, even though it's dark, even though it's scary, lobstering is going to really help you out with 3 skills: is, mapping the environment, increasing your CO2 tolerance by working on that higher interval, and then, lastly is just making sure you can deal with the elements, figure out what's going on with what at night in the dark.
How about, to close this up, we do a couple rapid fire questions. These are just off the top of my head. Yeah, game bag or no game bag around your waist?
I say game bag, but safety wise, please be careful with the game bag.
Do you bring out a spear gun when you go lobster diving, or just
negative.
Focus on lobsters?
Big negative, Charlie. Big negative.
Day bugs or night bugs?
Night bugs for sure.
Okay, that's it, guys. That's all I have. I hope we answered all your guys' questions. Is there anything you want to leave the listeners? This has been a great series, man.
Thank you, man. No, I just want to say, John, you're freaking awesome. You're doing a great job on the show, and thank you for saving my life. I owe you. For any of your followers out there, that's just a testament to how awesome John is, and he's dedicated to making sure you guys are enjoying the content. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate that, man. And I'm just so thankful for all the lessons you've taught me over the last couple of years in spearfishing, and I'm hoping for many more. Definitely check out Matt's Instagram page, Mr.California with a 1, his new YouTube channel, Adventure Eats. Big shout out to Mr. Joint, Spear America, and be sure to check out, if you're in the OC area, Paracel's, his awesome seafood and wedding venue. This place is amazing. Thanks, Matt, for everything.
Thanks, John. Can't wait for the adventures.
Hey, one more thing before you go. Do you like this podcast? Well, we're trying to keep it ad-free as much as possible. And to do that, we just ask if you could support us. That'd be amazing. Just head over to shop.castandspear.com or consider contributing to our Patreon page. Thanks so much in advance. See you on the next one. Bye.